Hey everybody, how's everybody doing today? Today we have Bill Morrison with us. Thanks, Bill, for stopping by the cave and hanging out with us.
My pleasure, Marty. It's good to be here. Hey, everyone.
If you don't know who Bill Morrison is, he's an artist. He's a creator. He's an editor. He's a
Writer.
He's
art director.
a man with many titles, and has been in all kinds of things, and has got his hands still in all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So, Bill, I appreciate you stopping by and talking to us today. I know you're busy here, but tell us a little bit about, for our subscribers and people that don't know who you are. I know Bill's worked with, he's most known for The Simpsons and Futurama, and go ahead and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
I grew up in Detroit, or outside of Detroit, Michigan, and I started out wanting to be a comic book artist as a kid. And when I was in art school, I went to art school in Detroit at the Center for Creative Studies. And while I was there, I had to start seriously thinking about, well, once I graduate, what am I going to do? And what should I be directing my portfolio toward? Because when you're in art school, you're building your portfolio in order to try to get the job that you want.
Right.
And so I was thinking, well, I'd really like to be a comic book artist, but back then it was very different than it is now, and you really had to go to New York City to get started in comics because all the publishers were there. There was actually, in the early 80s, there was one comic company that started on the West Coast, Pacific Comics, but everything else was in New York. And I was terrified of New York City. I'd never been there, but I think I grew up, watching so many Martin Scorsese movies as a teenager, and 70s cop shows on TV, and it was all about how New York is just so full of crime. And I remember seeing the movie The Out of Towners with Jack Lemmon. And the first thing that happens when he gets to New York is he gets mugged. And so that was my impression of New York. So I just thought, I don't know if I can make it in New York. I don't know if I want to be there, which is weird because I grew up in Detroit, which at the time was the murder capital of the world.
You just didn't know it.
I guess it's the evil you know is better than the evil you don't know, So while I was in art school, I started thinking, well, what's an alternative to that? And I got into an airbrush class, and I had a really great teacher named Gary Ciccarelli. And he turned me on to this like West Coast airbrush look that was on album covers and movie posters and greeting cards. And it was just like this really cool late 70s, early 80s vibe that was happening out on the West Coast. And I got into it, and I started directing my portfolio towards that because I thought going out to California would be great. My wife, she's an actor, and I knew that that's where she wanted to end up. When I got out of art school, the only job I could get was as a technical illustrator. And so I spent 2 years doing these very tedious little drawings for automobile parts manuals and owner's manual, like the manual you get when you buy a car, and it would show you diagrams of like where to fill the oil. So you got like a shot of the engine, but these very detailed little line drawings. And so I did that for 2 years, but I continued to work on my portfolio. And I started doing samples that were movie poster images and album cover images. So after I was married a year, I took a vacation, went out to California, made all these appointments, and I just showed my portfolio around. And I got a job at a place called BD Fox and Friends. And it was kind of like a boutique ad agency that catered to the entertainment industry, mostly the movie industry. We did some TV guide ads, but mostly we did movie posters. So that was where I got my feet wet as an illustrator doing movie ads for... I worked on a lot of big movies in a small way. So I would do like the preliminary concept sketches. But then every so often they would get a low budget film in, and I'd have to do like a poster for what they used to call direct to drive-in movies.
Okay.
So they'd call them, Now it's like direct to video. If a movie's kind of, a B or a C-list movie and it's not going to screen in theaters, it'll go direct to video. Back then it was direct to drive-in. And so I did a lot of really bad horror movies and teen sex comedies, stuff like that. But that's how I learned, and I got better as an illustrator. And I got to do art that appeared on a poster. And some of the biggest ones that I did, there was a movie called House with William Catt, and that turned out to be a pretty big movie, kind of like an A movie, I think. And now it's an iconic thing because they use my art also on the video cassette packaging. And so 1 million kids growing up somehow managed to get their parents to rent that movie, even though it had this grisly illustration of a severed, rotting hand pushing a doorbell. But a lot of kids remember that. So I talked to a lot of people in their 30s who say, oh yeah, when I was a kid, that image scared the hell out of me, but it made me want to rent that movie. So that was one.
That led to a lot of bigger things, though.
It did.
Check out the movie posters that you've done. Like for Disney.
Yeah. The Disney stuff came a little later after I'd left that studio, and I got hired away by a man named David Willardson, who ran his own studio, just had a small operation with one other illustrator, and then he brought me in. At first, I was doing very photorealistic kind of product illustrations, like, labels for Nestle's Quick and billboards for things like California grapes and, just generic advertising, Maxell videotape, stuff like that. But then one project came in, and it was for Disney, and it was to do the re-release movie poster for Cinderella. And that project fell to me in the studio because Dave knew that I was into comics and cartoons, whereas Calvin Patton, who was the other illustrator, amazing photorealistic painter, we were both doing the photorealism, but he was way better at it. From that point on, sort of all the photorealistic stuff fell to Calvin, and all the cartoon stuff came to me. So Disney liked what I did, and they kept feeding us jobs, and I did posters for the Little Mermaid, the original Little Mermaid poster, and Oliver and Company, Bambi, Peter Pan, The Jungle Book, Lady and the Tramp.
All the main Disney pictures that was the 90s, wasn't it in the late 80s, 90s?
Late 80s, early 90s. And back then, Disney would put out one new film a year, new animated film, and then they would release at least 2 classics into theaters. So when they released one into the theaters, they would need a new poster for it. So I did posters for every Disney movie that came out for about 5 years. My goal was, after I'd done so many, I thought, well, if Disney keeps doing this and I keep at this job long enough, I thought, what if I could do a poster for every Disney feature, going all the way back to Snow White and all the way up to whatever the current one was. And then The Simpsons came along, and I got hired away again to work for Fox, and then spent the next 25 years of my life drawing The Simpsons.
Bill is very well known for The Simpsons. I know we said that earlier, but he was the co-owner or co-founder of Bongo.
Of Bongo Comics.
And so he's been in the industry a long time. Even the Yellow Submarine. Tell us a little bit about that, because I have definitely some subscribers that love that.
Most recently, I did a graphic novel adaptation of the Yellow Submarine, the famous Beatles animated feature. And the way that came about, the project actually started back in the late 90s, and I was commissioned to both write and draw it was originally going to be about a 48-page adaptation of the film. And I got about 25 pages into it. I did a cover and about 25 pages, and then the plug got yanked on the project. And I'm not sure exactly why. I've heard two stories. One was that the publisher, which was Dark Horse Comics, and they were great. They did everything right. But what I heard was they got me started on the project before Apple was able to give them a formal contract.
Okay.
So it was kind of a handshake deal, and they wanted the book to come out in time with the 30th anniversary of the film. So they said, you need to get on this now so that we can hit that deadline. And then the deal fell through because Apple, what I had heard was that Apple at the time had decided that they really only wanted to do kind of like high-end merchandise, and they didn't really feel like comics fell into that category, so they changed their mind. And I don't know if that's the case, but that was one story I heard. The other one was that the George Harrison estate, because his company is called Dark Horse Records, feared that if the comic ended up becoming an inferior product, that his Dark Horse Records would be confused with the product as if they were the publisher of it. And he thought, well, we don't want to really be tied in with something that we don't necessarily know how it's going to come out. And either one of those are kind of legitimate concerns. Yeah. But in either case, whatever the story, the true story is, they just told me to stop working on it, and the pages went into a drawer, and I figured they would just never be seen again. But as the internet and Facebook and sites like Comic Art Fans became popular, I started showing the pages. And somebody, I think Comic Book Resources did an article about it, about the Unseen Beatles project, the never finished Bill Morrison Beatles project and all that kind of stuff. And so people started seeing the pages, and a couple of publishers got interested, and they were brought to the attention of the man who runs all the Beatles licensing in North America. And he really loved it, and he thought that there should be a Beatles Yellow Submarine adaptation. So he went to Apple and said, let's find a way to make this finally happen. So it did, and I finished the story. It was expanded to 96 pages, I think. And we did it as a hardcover with Titan Books in the UK. And it came out in 2018, and it was amazing because having 96 pages rather than 48, I was able to, I didn't have to cut out certain things that originally I was having to kind of do like a digest version of the story. But I got to cover pretty much everything. And, it was just this weird feeling of closure, where something that I had started 20 years earlier and didn't think I would ever be able to finish, I was finally able to see it come to fruition.
I know when you Google your name, that's one of the first things that pops up.
Oh,
is the Yellow Submarine, and yeah. I mean, that is really a cool story that I know we had talked a little bit about it back. It was about a year ago, wasn't it, when I first met you?
Yeah.
And I remember you telling me a little bit about the story, and I thought, man, that's an awesome story, especially for a creator, an illustrator, a writer. I mean, to have enclosure on a book, I mean, it's definitely something that's an accomplishment.
Thank you.
And it's definitely an accomplishment.
Well,
so.
I think I've been very fortunate throughout my career to have been given opportunities to work on things that are so famous and that everybody loves. And I mean the properties themselves, just The Simpsons is such a beloved animated show. And Futurama has such a huge cult fan base. And, Disney goes without saying, just everything I've done for Disney, because of the strength of the films, it's instantly recognized and embraced by fans. And then, you you don't get much bigger than the Beatles. So I think I've had like 4 things that I've been closely associated with that just open doors no matter where I go. If somebody introduces me to someone else and they say, "This is Bill, he did the Beatles' Yellow Submarine graphic novel," I don't need anything else, you know? And so I've been very fortunate to have that.
So what do you have going on now? I mean, what's some future things that we can all see from Bill Morrison?
Well, I've been doing some projects for the print market, I guess what they call the fine art limited edition print market. I've got some things coming out with Marvel characters. I just did a Spider-Man print that's not released yet, but soon to be released. I'm working on a Star Wars limited edition print, and these are things that will be sold online in galleries. You know, fine art. I always say fine art with air quotes because you know, it gets applied now to what we do, but I mean, come on, I'm not Picasso, but I'm doing things that are being sold in galleries and in the theme parks and that sort of thing.
You don't do much commissions anymore, do you?
I do, yeah.
Do you?
I do commissions.
Where could they look you up and find you at?
The best place to go, I have a new company that's repping me called 4C Comics, and you can find them online. Probably the easiest way is to go to their Facebook page, 4C Comics.
4C Comics?
And you can arrange commissions with me through them.
And I know you're on Facebook.
Yeah.
And everything, but I know you don't always look at that. I understand that. You got some things.
It's weird. I started like a professional Facebook page, which is called Atomic Battery Studios, which is my illustration studio.
Yeah.
But I tend to spend more time on my personal Facebook page, and I'll forget to post things on the professional one. So I'll post something on my personal page, and then a couple of days later I'll say, "Oh yeah, I'm doing that appearance. I should probably talk about that on my professional page." And sometimes I get there a little too late, but
well, that's what 4C Comics is for, right?
Yeah.
You're supposed to
yeah, take care of that for me.
That's right. Well, Bill, I really appreciate your time. I know you're busy here, and
thank you, Marty.
Definitely been fun to get to know you and get to meet you, and I appreciate all that you do for the industry and everything else. It's been great.
Thank you. This is fun, and I hope you're having a good show.
We're definitely having a great show.
Yeah, it looks like you are, and I'm happy to be here in the cave.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.